Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Sports Talk Philadelphia. Do you know what month it is? It's October. That means Redtober. Phillies baseball is back. I'm excited. I know you guys should be excited. We have that and much more to go over in this episode of Sports Talk Philadelphia. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Sports Talk Philadelphia. I'm your host, Braden Knapp, and I'm joined here today with a full panelist right here on my left, Tyler Farmer. How are you?
I'm good.
Perfect. And then we have Kevin Gamlin. How are you?
Doing pretty good.
Awesome. And over there on the last seat, we have Chris. How are you?
Doing good, Braden. Ready
Awesome.
to talk some sports?
Oh, of course. And so to begin today, we're going to talk about the Eagles. So the Bucks throttle the Birds in Tampa. Ooh, I know that was a fun game. So on Baker Mayfield finished the game with 347 pass yards with 3 TDs. Hurts had 158 yards with 1 touchdown, 1 fumble, and he was sacked 6 times. Oh my goodness. And unfortunately, the Eagles have been outscored by Tampa 65-25 in the last 2 meetings. Oh my goodness. Boys, this game, I mean, there's not a lot of positives to come from it, but let's just discuss it. Tyler, what's your overview of this game?
That was embarrassing. That was disgraceful. There was one point in the second quarter when Tampa was up 21-0, and the Eagles had 0 yards and the Bucks had 255 yards. I get sometimes teams have bad days. Every team has them, but that was just embarrassing. That was disgraceful. The team came out completely flat. They came out unmotivated. They just didn't care.
No, and Kevin, there's something to add on to that.
Yeah, I would say they need to use Saquon a lot more. I think his usage, especially with Devontae Smith out, A.J. Brown out, Saquon should be used a lot more. It just didn't make sense how he only had 10 carries. So.
No, yeah, it really doesn't make sense, does it? And then, Chris, at the end, anything to add?
Yeah, just more of the same sentiment. Brutal game. The whole first half, you made Baker Mayfield look like Tom Brady, peak Tom Brady. So that was rough. But I don't think this is the end of the world by any means. They were out, as Kevin already mentioned. They were out A.J. Brown. They were out Devontae Smith. They were out Lane Johnson. So they were out 3 of their best players. I think they'll respond, but just overall, very brutal game.
Yeah, and Chris, like you said, I mean, Lane Johnson was out, Devontae Smith, and A.J. Brown. Of course, those are our best players pretty much, but is that an excuse for the way that we played, do you think?
That's a good question. I wouldn't say it's not an excuse by any means, but you got to think the Bucks were they were a little banged up too, but they still had all their guys. They still had Mike Evans, who did his thing. They still had Baker do his thing. Their running game was getting going, which it wasn't getting going against other teams, but of course against the Eagles they get it going. But as far as those 3, I wouldn't say an excuse, but it definitely put them at a severe disadvantage.
I agree. Not only were we out in some of our key guys, but it just seems like the guys that we do have, they're not performing. I know one issue with Jalen Hurts here. I mean, he only had 158 yards. He had a touchdown at least, but another fumble. At least he didn't throw an interception this game. That's some positive, but I don't know. I mean, Tyler, is Jalen the guy to you? Do you think he's the guy?
I mean, I do think he's still the guy, don't get me wrong, but these turnovers are an issue. And that fumble, even though it wasn't a pick, the Eagles were gaining some type of momentum before that turnover that happened deep in Bucs territory, and that kind of stunted any chance of the Eagles coming back. So while I do believe Jalen's the guy still, I still believe in his talent and his abilities. He's got to fix these turnover issues.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And I know it's hard to blame him, especially last week without A.J. Brown and Smith. But one guy who we traded for at the beginning of the year is Jahan Dotson still. Where is he? I mean, Kevin, can you give him an answer? I mean, I don't know. Where's Jahan been?
Yeah, I don't know. He was supposed to be the wide receiver 1 last week, and decided not to show up, I guess. So they need to get him more involved for sure. Dallas Goedert, Saquon, but yeah, like Tyler was saying, I think Jalen Hurts is still the guy, but with those guys being out, it has to make it harder for him to make more plays. So.
Oh, I agree. And not only did our offense didn't really show up, but our defense certainly did not show up. I mean, the Eagles defense allowed 4 scoring drives before they even managed 1 net positive yard. That is terrible. For a team that's supposedly a Super Bowl contending team, that can't happen, especially against the Bucs. I mean, Chris, what do you think about our defense so far this year?
Well, against the Buccaneers, it was not great, and for me, it comes back to the leadership of these star key players. You know, last time I was on here, I talked about Darius Slay and how he, you know, for lack of a better word, wasn't a leader after the game, and for now, he's doing essentially the same thing. Right after the game, he goes on X and tweets out all of his career stats after a blowout loss, and then deletes the tweet because he knows he looks not very much of a leader there. And not only that, he goes on Micah Parsons, who is a rival player for the Dallas Cowboys, and he goes on his podcast, and he's laughing with him, and he's buddy-buddy with him, like they're on the same team, and like the Eagles are coming off this great win. But that's not at all what happened. And the defense overall, though, to get back to your point, not feeling too great about it.
No, I would agree. And unfortunately, I mean, with our standings here, NFC standings, the Commanders, who are right now leading, which is very interesting, 3-1. The Cowboys 2-2. We're also 2-2, and then Giants is 1-3. I mean, our defense needs to step it up, especially against, I mean, what's right now the Commanders, who look good with their rookie quarterback, and we know against the Cowboys, that's going to be a tough game. So, I mean, our defense really has to step up. But, I mean, is there any thoughts, Tyler, so far on what the standings are looking like? Commanders first? Is that crazy? Or?
Yeah, I don't think anybody saw that coming, especially 4 weeks into the season. The Eagles are going to need to step it up, especially defensively, because Jaden Daniels, he looks like the real deal. I mean, completing 80% of his passes. They hung 40 on Arizona, 38 on Cincinnati. Their offense is legit. And that defense that showed up on Sunday, or well, didn't show up on Sunday, they're in for a rude awakening if they don't get it together.
I would 100% agree. And then with going forward with our upcoming schedule, right now the Eagles have a bye week, which I think is a great thing. Let's rest up. Let's keep all our guys healthy. And then going into next week, we have the Browns, and then we have at the Giants. So, Kevin, what do you think about this upcoming schedule so far?
Yeah, I think the bye is definitely in a good position right now. With Devontae Smith hurt, A.J. Brown hurt, Lane Johnson hurt, I think it's a good place for them to recover, get everyone healthy. The first 2 games out of the bye, the Browns and the Giants, they should win those games. Those are very winnable games. But like you can't control Washington or Dallas if they win or not. So I think you just got to hope for the best and just down the stretch get the big wins when you need them.
I agree, and as you said, those should be wins. I mean, I also look at these 2 games. I'm like, these are must-win games. But I thought the same against the Bucs. So a little part of me is, I mean, kind of scared, honestly. I mean, Tyler, what about you? What do you think? These upcoming games, do you think we're going to win or what?
I mean, they should win, but we thought they should have beat Tampa too. And, you know, I think it comes down to really getting healthy, Hurts cutting out the turnovers, and the defense just fundamentally with tackling, improving, and communication, stuff like that. Because anytime you play a division rival, those games could go back and forth either way. So it's really up to the Eagles this bye week to fix some of the fundamental issues that they've been having throughout the team.
I agree. And we're going to move it off to a little something more positive now, away from the Eagles. Let's move into something actually awesome here. It's Redtober. Phillies playoff baseball is back. So, I mean, we have the Eagles, the Phillies, they have a first-round bye. The first playoff game is going to be played October 5th, and they avoided a sweep against the Nationals, winning the final game 6-3. So, I mean, it's Redtober. I mean, I can't wait to watch them play. They're either going to play the winner of the Mets or the Brewers. I mean, so we'll see on that. But the Mets did win the first game last night. Going over to Chris, what do you think about, let's start with the Mets and Brewers. Who do you think's coming out of that?
Well, Braden, out of that series, the way it's looking right now, and with all the momentum they have, it's looking like it's going to be the Mets. And I know for a lot of people, and rightfully so, it's going to look like a very scary series. The Mets are no joke. They're red hot right now. But I think that environment of a Mets-Phillies playoff series there's going to be no comparison to it. One of the Phillies' biggest rivals, one of Philadelphia's most hated teams ever being the New York Mets. I think that's going to be a very, very interesting series, and I'm looking forward to it because I do believe the Mets will take care of business tonight against the Brewers.
Interesting. And then Kevin, what do you think? You think the Mets, Brewers? What are we thinking here?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Chris as well. I'm gonna take the Mets here. The Phillies have a 7-6 record versus the Mets this year, so like Chris said, it should be a really good series if they play. I think the Brewers are the better seed though, so I wouldn't count them out just yet.
I mean, I agree. I know the Mets did win the first game, but I mean, it's baseball. Crazy things can happen. So I mean, we'll see tonight. I know the Mets starting pitcher, we have Manea, and then the Brewers starting pitcher is Montas. I know Manea is a pretty good pitcher. We'll see if the Mets handle business. But, I mean, like you said, we can't count the Brewers out. The Brewers are a good team. I mean, I know I would rather see the Phillies play the Brewers, so I'm kind of hoping for the Brewers to pull that one out. But as you said, the Mets are just so hot right now. And this is a team like the Phillies a couple years ago, is that wild card team you don't want to play because they could make it all the way. So, but let's move away from them and more towards the Phils. Chris, right now we have a first round bye. What should the Phillies be doing right now to be prepared for the next series?
Well, luckily, what they are doing and what they should be doing is they're not taking anything for granted. They're having an inter-squad scrimmage this week, and that is big because it won't be anything too serious, in terms of guys giving 100%, but it'll be enough to keep them loose, to keep them energized, and to keep the competitive fire going into this huge playoff series. So getting their rightful rest is definitely going to be big for this long bye week break, but also staying loose, just having like a good balance of, staying right and also getting the rest in because they did earn it. They earned the bye. They earned a little bit of this downtime. They had a great regular season, one of the best in Phillies history. Hopefully they keep it rolling into this series.
I agree, and I have a question for the two of you. We did get the bye week. Some sports fans do not like having the bye week. Do you think, starting with you, Kevin, do you think the bye week is going to be a good thing for the Phils having a rest, or what do you think?
I think the bye week can be a good thing. It is what you make it. So, like what Chris was saying, the inter-squad scrimmage I think is really good, but the bye week can sometimes just slow you down. And going into the playoffs, like that's really the last thing you need. Whereas the Mets, like they're really hot right now, like Chris said. So I think that's huge, but ultimately, like I think the Phillies will be all right.
I agree. And Chris, do you have anything to add off of that?
Yeah, that's a very good point about the bye week and the momentum because the Phillies were that team last year. Obviously, 2 years ago, it took them all the way to the World Series. But I have a bit of a different take, only because I just think for this team, they're battle tested. They've been there the past 2 years. And for the pitchers especially, I think this bye week is going to be really, really key to get them their rightful rest to make sure they're all completely 100% for this upcoming series. So I think for this specific team, I do think it's helpful and useful, but it's not an end-all, be-all for if they're going to win the series or not because the Mets or the Brewers, the Brewers still have a chance. They're going to have the momentum already playing a few playoff games, but I think overall it's a good thing.
I agree, and one big thing for the Phillies playoff picture here is our players to step up and to play good. I mean, we had 9 Phillies nominated for an All-Star. Let me list them out now. You have Jeff Hoffman, Matt Strom, Zach Wheeler, Ranger Suarez, Christopher Sanchez, Trey Turner, Alex Baum, Bryce Harper, and Kyle Schwarber. Lots of guys getting nominations, which deservingly enough. Very good players. But, I mean, these guys and all the other Phillies, they're going to have to step up. To you guys, is there anyone in particular, do you think, that really has to step up and kind of lead this team? Starting with you, Kevin.
I would say Bryce Harper. I think Bryce Harper is obviously, he's the guy who kind of paves the way for the Phillies in some ways. And I think if his bat is going, I think that'll be huge for the Phillies down the stretch because I feel like the other players can sometimes rely on him to get going a little bit.
Agree. And Chris, is there anyone else, maybe Bryce or another player?
Yeah, obviously Harper has to step up, but for me, this is a bit of a different take. I'm going to go with Ranger Suarez of the guys. He was an all-star, as you mentioned, but for Ranger, it's kind of been a tale of two seasons. You know, first month and a half, he was the best pitcher in all of baseball. Then he had a little injury through the season, and that really stunted his second half. He really just hasn't been the same guy. Hopefully he can tap into what he had the first half of the season because in the playoffs, they're going to need him. Pitching it wins championships. Ranger's been a workhorse for them the past few years in the playoffs. And I'm confident he has that switch in him where I think once he gets out there on the mound in the playoffs, he'll be good to go. But for me, it's Ranger Suarez. He needs to step up and be that pitcher he was in the first half of the season.
I like that. And to end off with the Phils here, we're going to go over the NLDS schedule. So game 1, Saturday, October 5th, home, and then a second home game on Sunday, October 5th. Then the 2 away games on the 8th and the 9th, and finally, if we need to, of course, final home game on the 11th. So starting with you, Kevin, I mean, since we got the bye, we have 2 home games. I know playing in Philly is not a fun thing for teams. Are you excited that we have the 2 home games?
Oh, yeah, the crowd should be crazy. I think that you always, like the other day I was looking back, watching some of the videos of like the dancing on my own song. So I think that the crowd will for sure be hyped, especially if they win. So.
Oh yeah, and Chris, how impactful do you think it's going to be for the Phils to have the 2 home games starting off?
I think it's very, very impactful. Citizens Bank Park is the best home field in all of baseball, and it should continue this weekend.
Yes, and unfortunately, that's all the Phils time that we have for today. But we're going to move on to the next team. It is the Flyers. They're slowly coming back now to start their season. They continue preseason action. They have an overall record of 3-3. They unfortunately lost their last 2. Their next and believe final regular preseason game is on Thursday against the Devils, and the first regular season game is on October 11th at the Canucks. So I know, unfortunately, the last game with the Flyers was a 4-1 loss to the Bruins. Not very good, but Bruins are a very good team. But there are some, I think, takeaways from this game. Michkov scored. I know that's at least something. And I know in goal, Sam Ersson, I know he had an impressive performance, and he's right now looking like the standout for in goal, which is awesome. He hasn't looked rusty, and it's been a little iffy. We'll see. But Chris, for these Flyers, what do you think? What do you think is the biggest thing that we're going to need going into this season?
One guy, Matvei Michkov. You already mentioned him, but the way he's being talked about and the way everything I've been seeing, he is going to make or break the Flyers' season, and he can either change the direction of the franchise or they're going to keep it in the way he is, because they took this guy a few years ago and had to be sure that he was coming over from Russia. Fortunately, he did. He looks awesome so far in the preseason, and he's complimenting the other guys that have been here already, like Konechny and Tippett. He's complimenting them really well so far. Really interested to see his development over the preseason and, of course, in the regular season, because if he's as good as everyone's saying he's going to be, Flyers might be a really sneaky, surprising team this year in the NHL.
Oh, I agree. I know. I was talking to some people, and there's arguments that Michkov is up there, right there with Bedard, and the only reason why he wasn't drafted as high is because he had to go play in Russia for a little bit. I know I'm excited. I mean, Michkov at least scoring against the Bruins, that's good momentum moving forward. I know another guy, rookie, who they just drafted, Jet Lushkano. He looks really good. I mean, he had a great regular preseason so far. He's a standout. I know some some Flyers fans want to see him maybe on the active NHL roster, but I know in the last game he didn't look very impressive against the Bruins. And as of right now, it doesn't look like he's going to make that final cut. But Chris, how are you thinking? Do you think this rookie? Do you think he's going to make the team? Or?
With Rhett, I mean, he's raw. He's really young. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he starts the season not with the Flyers, but I'll be interested to see how it all plays out with him.
I agree. And with that first game against Canucks, what are you thinking? Do you think it's going to be a tough game or going forward?
I'm thinking it'll be, hopefully they get it done. It's all going to come down to Michkov and the Stars, but I can't really, it's still ways out from the season, so I'll not really going to make a prediction yet.
That's fair. And unfortunately, that's all the time we have for the Union. But we're now going, or that's all the time we have for the Flyers. I jumped ahead there. Now we're going into our Union talk. So the Union, they've had a very strong finish to the end of their season. Right now they're 2-0-1 the last 3 matches. They beat NYFC 5-1 and DC United 4-0. They tied Atlanta the last game, and their next match is against Orlando, actually tonight at 7:30. So Kevin, I mean, I know looking back to a couple episodes ago, we little unsure about this Union team, but I mean, they've looked good. I mean, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, like winning those 2 games and then tying with Atlanta is huge. Like they have this momentum here going into the playoffs, but it's like, can they even make it and be competitive with all those teams like Miami, and then they play Cincinnati, Columbus, Orlando tonight. So
Exactly. I mean, like what he said, I mean, the Union's last 3 games are against the second place team, the third place team, and the fourth place team. We currently sit in the playoff, in qualification playoffs. So they are, but I mean, if we end up finishing in the qualification playoffs, we're going to be playing the 1 seed. That's Miami. We do not want that. We are 5 points behind Charlotte, who sits in the automatic qualification. I mean, these next 3 games are going to be crucial. We're going to have to pick up as many points as possible if we can make it out of the qualification playoffs. And now moving on to our favorite segment, and that is our Fast 5. So let's get started with the biggest surprise of the wild card round with Chris.
Yeah, so far it's been a very entertaining wild card round. You know, Tigers knocking off Astros, Mets knocking off the Brewers. A lot of upsets so far. But for me, of all the surprises so far, I'm going to actually still say it's the Tigers. You know, going into Houston, taking care of business against the Astros, who on the road, they've been a dynasty. They're a dynasty. You know, it's a tough environment. They went in there, they got it done. They're currently playing game 2. Hopefully the Tigers pull it out, just selfishly as a Phillies fan. But they looked really promising in their first game. And to me, they're the biggest surprise of the round so far.
Awesome. And next question. Will Nick Sirianni last the entire season with Kevin?
So Chris was talking about at the beginning of the show about Bill Belichick coming to Philly, but I think there's a lot of speculation, a lot of rumors, but I think Sirianni should stay. And you got Hurts, Barkley, A.J. Brown, and the defense, like, it's fine. It could be better, but like they have a really good core where this team could go very far. And Jalen Hurts and Sirianni have already been to the Super Bowl before. So I think that they can do it again, but it's just a matter of getting everybody healthy. And it's early in the year. They played 4 games. They got to bye, so time to take care of everything.
And I agree, and to go off of that, I mean, I wouldn't want to see Nick Sirianni go either. I say we give him the year, see how it goes. I know it can be, especially now in the NFL, it can be easy just to quick fire coaches, but don't think that's the way to go. I think we, as you said, we keep it out with Sirianni. Next question, we have Embiid weight loss a good thing with Tyler?
I don't think it's just a good thing. I think it's a great thing. I've always felt Joel Embiid hasn't really taken the offseason seriously in terms of his conditioning and staying healthy. And I feel like him getting some of that weight off, I think is going to help his knees a lot, because that's where a lot of his injuries in the past have gone to. And I think it'll also help him move around better on the court as well. So I don't think it's a good thing. I think it's a great thing. They said he reportedly lost up to 25, 30 pounds. And shoot, if that's the case, I need to know what his regimen is, because I need to lose a few myself.
And now with our next question, again with Tyler, what must the Eagles address during this bye week?
Well, I think number one, they need to get healthy. Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Lane Johnson, any other guys nicked up, get those guys healthy. I think that's definitely the number one priority. But they need to find an identity. Like, what is going to be our bread and butter for the rest of the season? Are we going to be a run-first team? Are we going to be a pass-first team? Have an identity that we can stick to and we can build off of at the end of the day.
I agree with that. Now with our last question, is the Union playoff chances done? With me, as of right now, I would not call it done at all. I mean, we have 3 games left. As I said earlier, we're playing against all the top teams besides Miami, the second place team, third place team, and the fourth place team. It's going to be very tough. Obviously, at the end of the year, it's not just out of the question yet, but unfortunately, the Union kind of dug themselves a little bit of a hole, and they're going to have to depend on other teams' fixtures, which is never a thing you want to do, or it's not a good feeling when you have to depend on other teams to get into the playoffs. All the Union can do is just focus on themselves and get as many points as possible. At this point, I know against tying any of these teams, either Orlando, Columbus, or Cincinnati, would be awesome because those are great teams. But they can't afford that right now. They have to win each game. They need as many points as possible. I mean, they win these next 3 games, that's 9 points. Union currently sit at 37. So just adding that much, I mean, they'll put us right in the middle of the playoff picture, not the qualification playoffs. Because qualification playoffs, it's a relatively new thing to the MLS, and it's a cool thing. More teams can have a chance to make it in the playoffs. Maybe some underdogs have a chance to get in. But I mean, that team plays the first place team. That's Miami. So whoever gets that playoffs has to play the juggernaut and Lionel Messi, Luis Suarez, and Inter Miami. I mean, I know the Union do not want that. They don't have the team. No, does anyone have the team for that? But yeah, and unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today's show. If you would please check out our socials on X and Instagram at SportsTalk LTV. Please stay tuned to next week. I know it's going to be an action-packed episode. Lots of things going to happen. Let's hope Eagles are back in the win column. I hope you all have a great day, and see you next time.